Hello there, this is Anne Butler, the Book Griffin, and welcome to another book chat. I love those drums. Right, so what I want to talk to you about today is series. It's hard to pick up a new novel these days and not find that it's part of a series. The start of a series or the end of a series, the middle of a series, part of a series. I'm not averse to picking up a book that's part of a series. My preference is for books that are standalone. So even though they are part of a series, they can be read as a standalone story. The fact that you don't necessarily know who the secondary characters are doesn't detract from enjoying the story. That's my preference when I'm reading a book that's part of a series. It infuriates me when I pick up a story and I get to the end only to find cliffhanger. No. I want the story to end. I want to have a choice whether, you do have a choice, but I'd rather not get suckered into buying the next story to find out how it all ends. That's my personal preference. Back in the early noughties, I picked up the first of the Wallflower series by Lisa Kleypas. It's a series of historical romances, and the title includes a season. So, for example, Secrets of a Summer Night was the first, and it was one of my favourites of the series, and there were 4 books in all. I really enjoyed 1, 3, and 4 in particular. Loved the whole Wallflower series, loved some of the characters. I've even talked about some of the characters in other podcasts. Even though each book was part of a series, they can be read as a standalone. As far as I was concerned, job done. I was in. But before the Wallflower series, we had a really edgy story by Elizabeth Buchanan called Revenge of the Middle-Aged Woman. This came out in 2007. This was one of a series of 2 books, the second being The Second Wife. I really enjoyed the first of the 2. Either could be read as standalone. If, like me, you don't mind reading a series, provided you don't have to read all of the stories, check this out, another old school, oldie but goodie by Elizabeth Buchanan. A few months ago, one of my followers asked me to read her latest novel and provide a review, and I was all in. Even though it was a fantasy, which is not my genre, I thought, I liked the premise, I read the blurb, it sounded great, loved the cover, all of that stuff. And 3 or 4 pages in, I realised it was the continuation of a story from a previous novel. Yes, that infuriated me. Unfortunately, I had to disappoint my follower and decline to finish the book because I wasn't inclined to buy the previous novel in order to read and review the next story, especially given that it wasn't my genre. Stop judging me. I don't like series. I don't do fantasy. Anyway, back on track to series that I read and were good as standalone. The Dillon sisters. Now, what was interesting about this is that there were 2 books in the series, or I should say there are 2 books in the series, each written by a different author. The first, Damage, was written by Layla Frost. The second, Deathly, was written by Bryn Asher. Damage was my favourite of the 2, although it was a very, very, very challenging read. Trigger warning here. The story deals with suicide and self-harm. It is not for the faint-hearted. However, I read it in practically one sitting because I was just so intrigued by the premise, the setup, the characters. And I got to the end and I was intrigued enough to go and purchase part 2, Deathly. Either book can be read on their own without missing out, but my interest was piqued enough by the breadcrumbs left in Damage to go ahead and buy Deathly. So if you like a series and you like a nice compact series of stories, these two might be for you. Damage by Layla Frost and Deathly by Bryn Asher. Now I come to 2 series that I have not followed all the way through, even though each book can be read as a standalone. Because personally, I feel like they just went on and on. The first that I'll talk about is the KGI series by Maya Banks. Love some of the stories. So, for example, Forged in Steel. I really like that story. Steel and Marin. Steel, the badass mercenary, and Marin, the doctor who patches him and his team up when they come back from one of their escapades, shall we say. I feel like there were too many books. I feel like this horse was flogged to death and then flogged some more. But they are very popular and they get loads and loads of positive reviews on Goodreads and Amazon, so I'm in a minority here. The other, and this is the last that I'll talk about, is by J.R. Ward, and it's the Black Dagger Brotherhood series of books. They're kind of intertwined to the point where if you try and read one on its own, you may miss out. You may not quite understand everything that's going on, but for the most part, you can read each one on their own. However, we're now up to book 22. I mean, what the hell, guys? Anyway, it's now being made into either a Netflix or a Prime series. I can't remember which. I've seen the trailers on YouTube. So if you like this particular series, you have a decision to make whether you pick up the books, the Black Dagger Brotherhood series by J.R. Ward, or whether you wait for the Netflix or Amazon series. Anyway, I don't think I've even read half of the 22. Hard for me to remember which I've read. But I started with Lover Unbound, and it got me. They are dark tales featuring vampires and other supernatural creatures living alongside humanity, and they are written in a way that really grabbed me for a little while anyway. Not enough to stick with it for 22 books though. But if you're a sucker for series and intertwined stories and cliffhangers, then take all of what I have just said with a pinch of salt. Thanks for listening. This has been Anne Butler, the Book Griffin. If you enjoyed my ramblings, please like and subscribe to receive notification of new episodes. Leave a comment if you would like to suggest a topic for my book chats. And if you would like me to talk about one of your books, one of your stories, then also leave a note in the comments.